So because a lot of people have been responding really nicely to the new series I've started, a British take on American politics in general, I thought I'd continue it, and because I've got a lot of comments asking me to do this, today I'm going to be covering presidential candidate Andrew Yang. Now, like many people, I wasn't too aware who Yang was up until people in the comments of other videos are saying you must check out Andrew Yang, let's have your perspective on Andrew Yang. So I did what any good person does. I watched the Joe Rogan Experience podcast of him talking to Andrew Yang for about 2 hours. So most of my view of him is based on that, but I've also read his campaign website and read through a lot of his policy proposals just to have a look what he's really advocating, and he's a really interesting person, and a lot of the issues he brought up in that podcast I had never really thought about myself, but now I'm super aware of them and I feel they're really important. So let's get into my general perspective on Yang. Now, a big thing Yang was talking about in the Joe Rogan podcast was the danger that is coming from all these jobs getting automated, particularly in things like the trucking sector, retail, and other things like that. So he thinks, in the next 15 to 20 years, although he says it is already happening, most of these sort of menial tasks and manual labour jobs are going to be replaced by robots for many reasons. So, for example, in the trucking industry, it makes more sense because if the trucks are automated, they can drive 24 hours because truckers, I think they can only drive 14 hours a day. And then he says there'll be less accidents because, they're robotic and they have sensors and they'll slow down and they're not as subject to human errors and everything. Because it is a legit argument that truckers cause many road accidents every year across the world, but he focused on America. I think he said 4,000 deaths a year caused by truck accidents or something. So that is a legitimate argument for corporations to do this. So what he's proposing to tackle this automation is a freedom dividend, because he thinks that polls better. But basically he's advocating for universal basic income, which means you get $1,000 a month regardless of your income, just to really help out so you're not so reliant on your paycheck, because most Americans live paycheck to paycheck and a lot of them can't even afford a $400 emergency, to show how bad the problem is. So having an extra £1,000 a month or $1,000 a month, because it doesn't roughly translate to £1,000, is a good idea on the surface. And the way he described it was really interesting, because it's not like giving free money and then the money just goes away forever. Obviously these people are going to be investing it back in the economy, whether that's local restaurants or just corporations buying their stuff and everything. And because everyone gets this money, everyone will spend it in different ways. Some people will be spending it on rent, spending it on necessities, but other people who make a decent living don't have to do that, and they can just spend it on whatever they want. And someone did point out to me that they have tried it in some places, but what they normally do is sometimes they cut welfare programs and then they give you the $1,000. So what would actually happen is while everyone would get the $1,000, theoretical $1,000, people who are worse off and needed more than that would just get the $1,000. So they actually found that their benefits were cut. And I don't think that's what Yang is really proposing, just because based on his other policies you can kind of see his vision for this stuff. It's not about you get $1,000, that's to cover everything, because he also advocates for Medicare for all. And that's what I really like about Yang, because when you read through his policies, especially from a European British perspective, it's like a lot of this stuff is just so obvious, but it's so nice that just some random guy who's suddenly running for president just says them all, and they're not like radical or anything, or at least in my opinion. It's like putting body cameras on police. That's not radical. We have that in England. We have police having body cameras, and they get assessed by an independent body if they've dealt with like a pretty controversial crime, whether they've shot someone or violence has been used. And that just makes sense in the context of Europe and Britain. But, Yang's just saying it like it's a normal thing, which I really appreciate. And other things, talking about climate change, but I do have some criticisms and stuff like that, but I'll get into it. But just talking about, how climate change is a massive threat, talking about, Medicare for all. So, even though you'll get universal basic income, he's going to make healthcare a lot cheaper and a lot better. And he's saying he doesn't want the doctors to be incentivized by profits anymore, especially dealing with the opioid crisis, giving out opioids left, right and center. He wants the doctors to just work to help people, really, and that's what their job should be. So yeah, he just seems like a really interesting guy, and I like his approach to giving a lot of data and everything and giving good examples, and sort of realizing while universal basic income won't solve a lot of these problems, it's a contributing factor. He's saying that people getting out of prison, they just got a nice, $12,000 for the year to get them started and on the path to recovery. So they don't need an immediate bit of cash. However they're going to get it. Maybe going back into old ways that got them into prison in the first place. And then he also wants to legalise marijuana, and he's talking about pardoning everyone in prison who's been put there for non-violent marijuana offences. You know, this is just such rational stuff. But it just makes sense on the surface. And what I like about Yang's support at the moment is when you get a lot of Republicans and Democrats both supporting him, it's because what he says makes sense. And it's nice that while he's playing a game of politics and not identifying himself properly as either side, he said he had to join the Democratic Party really just to get into the debates because he's not a Republican, obviously, and he wouldn't be treated seriously by the Republicans. It's interesting how it's not like left or right, it's just like, here's what the problems we're going to face, and here's my solutions, and it's backed by data, it's going to make our capitalist system better, and it's going to make most people more happy. And on the surface, it does look really, really interesting. And would I be disappointed if he won the nomination? Not really, because I like a lot of his ideas, and it's very common sense approach to everything. But I do have some criticisms, however. So, for example, why would I want Bernie over Yang? It's because Bernie has a proven track record of fighting for these things. Fair enough, Yang, started up that thing to help young entrepreneurs, get their ideas started, and that's all really great and everything. But Bernie's more like, here's my policies, I've been fighting for them since 1981, and this is how I get it done, and this is my background in getting things passed in politics, because Bernie knows politics, Andrew Yang's a bit of an outsider. But it also goes to the point of trustworthiness. While Yang seems like a trustworthy guy because he's very smart and all these solutions he has in his head, like I'm saying, it seems pretty common sense. At the end of the day, can you trust him as much as someone like Sanders? Because Yang talks about having a lot of friends in Silicon Valley, lots of friends who are millionaires, entrepreneurs, and this is the capitalist class in America who have exploited the people. And my main criticism of Yang is probably how much he likes capitalism, because in my opinion, capitalism, especially free market capitalism, which Yang does like a lot, which you can read in his thing, because he thinks the free market capitalist system is a good way for the country to run. It just needs more local businesses, it needs more people spending at a local level. But while I think, as a universal problem, there's always a winner and loser in capitalism, and America proves that, for a lot of people, whether it's, American companies exploiting cheap labor in China and India, or just the way America works, because you always get to the top on the backs of people. So Elon Musk is a good example, right? So his Tesla workers have constantly said, we're treated really badly, he kind of threatens us not to unionize and everything. He's making money off their backs, and then the people expose how injured they got because there's not enough safety, because Elon Musk didn't like yellow lines painted everywhere. Elon Musk has made his money off the backs of those people. That's him winning, and that's him playing within the system. I don't see anything in Yang's proposals which are going to stop that exploitation, because Bernie's saying, look, our campaign is unionised, let's push for greater unions, let's push for greater workers' rights and stuff. But I don't really see that with Yang. It's more like capitalism is great, and he actually says that. Capitalism has brought the most innovation in the world and everything like that. Capitalism is the best, but it needs reforming. So let's reform it in this way, and in my idealised way of the world, we'll have nice commerce at the local level, corporations won't exploit people as much and everything. And I just think, to me, and in a universal context, we see today what capitalism leads to. Because do you think in the UK we do capitalism differently to the US? Yeah, we do. But the result is often the same. We have more socialised aspects to our economy, and so do other countries, but there's always an elite, there's always an oligarchy. You can't stop that, because that is what capitalism is. And I think there is a better way to do capitalism, definitely, because you can't just make countries socialist. And I'd say the Norwegian model, things like that, where they tax really high, and it's all about the quality of life. At the end of it, that's what socialism is. It's about happiness and your quality of life. It's not about totalitarian regimes and the Soviet Union or Venezuela. That's not what it's really about. It's about making everyone free enough to pursue their dreams. And I kind of think Yang sort of touches on this a bit with his policies, because it's like universal basic income is here, so you can pursue your dreams, and you don't just work to survive. You can have ideas to make yourself happy or just pursue your interests, and that's what I do like about him. But then his defense of capitalism and working within this capitalist framework, this American style capitalist framework to be exact as well, I don't know if it really does it for me enough. And I think for Americans, I don't think that's going to change with someone like Yang, because he's made his money off his stuff, and he's proposing to fix everything through capitalism. And I think at least the best solution is making it more like Western Europe or Scandinavia, where it's more a blend of socialism and capitalism, which I guess people could argue maybe Yang's policies do kind of lean into that a bit, especially the sort of framework and ideology behind it. But at the same time, it's something I don't really buy that much. And then this goes into my point about climate change. What he likes about capitalism, I don't think he's as scathing about corporations as he should be in regards to climate change. So I'll just read you a bit from his campaign website. So he talks about all the good stuff, talking about how it's an existential threat to our humanity, and he talks about regulating the fossil fuel industry and things like that. And it's all about the government and people at a local level changing loads of things. But again, this goes into my point about capitalism. It was found that I think it's 70% of carbon emissions are done by just 100 companies in the world. 100 corporations. So it's not on us anymore, really. It's not on the people. Reducing your own carbon footprint now is irrelevant. If 100 companies do 75% of the carbon emissions, it's obviously a symptom of capitalism that we've let this thing run amok so much they can do this. And of course there are some state-backed companies in China who are part of this as well, because China is the biggest polluter as a country. America is one of them as well. But at the same time, I don't see how really, you regulating these things, making more green things, but at the same time, these corporations, if you don't regulate them hard enough, which I hope he is saying with how he will regulate fossil fuel, but it kind of sounds like that's not what he's saying in this. It's more like we have to move away from those industries, so I'm not too sure about that point as well. I could be wrong. He's only got a little statement on this. If he goes more in depth about it, maybe he could persuade me to change my mind, but I see climate change as impossible to solve properly while free market capitalism exists in this world led by America and people that benefit from America's free market capitalism or have it imposed on them through the IMF and things like that. So one more slight criticism of Yang is his foreign policy. Now, I do like what he has to say. A lot of it he's talking about all the money we've wasted on war, all the money, that has just not been spent on America and infrastructure in America, and I really like that stuff and agree with it. But this might just be a personal, thing that gets me. He mentions both JFK and Ronald Reagan as people who, had a lot of allies and, kept the American way, and everyone really liked America. But at the same time, Ronald Reagan, is that really a great person to cite? The guy who sold arms to Iran, which, I don't technically mind because, I think it's all bullshit, this stuff with America and Iran. But the point is that was illegal, and then he took that money and he used it to fund right-wing death squads in Nicaragua. And Nicaragua became socialist during Jimmy Carter's administration, and he just said, fine, leave it. It's not up to us to decide what they want. They've been fighting for decades. Let's just leave them alone. But then Ronald Reagan came in and is like, here's the money to all these death squads, go around Nicaragua and wreak havoc on people to kill loads of innocent civilians. And all the other stuff that he did in his administration, all this bullshit, warmongering all the time, all the dictators he backed apartheid South Africa, just like the British government did. So I don't think he's a great person to really cite. And while JFK and Ronald Reagan have the similarity of they were good for America's world image, maybe in the Western world, at the same time, they ran America as normal. All the dictators JFK backed, all the dictators Ronald Reagan backed, all the shit they both did. Vietnam started under JFK's watch, and in my history degree we did the debate. Did he really set it on the path for war, or was it Johnson? And there's good debates for both sides of it. At the same time, he backed all these people. Same with Reagan. And citing them in your foreign policy, I don't know. That's why Tulsi Gabbard or someone like that is a bit better, because it's a bit more of a cynical take and a realistic take. Because she says similar things to Yang, like all these expensive wars, everything like that is just a waste of money. But at the same time, she's more like, I guess she sees the world for what it is a bit more, just all these games. Like, what do I think Andrew Yang would do with things like Iran or Saudi Arabia? Would it be business as usual with the Saudis? Would he keep arming them? Do you know what I mean? So if I missed that on the podcast and if he said it, I don't think he really touched on the Yemen stuff. And if he isn't good on that stuff, I don't know. I can see why people wouldn't care, but for me, as someone who did international relations and who really cares about that stuff, I don't know if I'd like him for president if he doesn't change his tune a bit. But yeah, overall, I find him a really, really interesting candidate, and I think like Bernie, he could do something good where he completely changed the conversation on a lot of issues, because in the podcast with Joe Rogan, he was saying that he's gone to Washington and tried to bring up these issues to a lot of people about the automation of various industries, and people don't take him seriously because they think that's too far from the future, while he's saying, it's here now. And the stuff of universal basic income and everything, I think that's really interesting, and he can put pressure on a lot of people to really question, should they support this thing? Is this best for America? And the things on the drug policies I really like, and things about private prisons, and that's the way he talks about how you shouldn't be doing these things for profit, really speaks to me a lot of the time. And like I said, it kind of leans into the socialist ideology, because Americans don't understand socialism, but socialism, that's what it's about. It's about being free of, you know, the capitalist slavery, so you can pursue things that you like and you can have a good life. You don't have to worry about this thing. And that's what America's a good example of. You know, you have to work just to live. It's not that you can live and work at a job that you really like, and that's the whole point of it. And that's kind of why I like Yang, but I have my doubts if you can achieve all the things he wants within the framework of America without fundamentally changing it. And I don't think Yang is trying to fundamentally change it. That's why I still lean a bit towards Bernie a lot more, because while he also has a proven track record, in Bernie's case, I think he sees the problems with the overall system a bit better, while Young's like, we can reform the system, but he does have really interesting ideas. It's not like Obama or Beto O'Rourke, like, we can reform the system and just make it a bit better and change it for everyone, and we'll give a nice speech about how great America is. It's like, let's reform it, and this is how I'm going to do it, and this is the date, and I think that's a really interesting approach. And I wouldn't be too upset if Bernie didn't win, if Yang won the nomination, because these are really interesting ideas, and he just seems like a normal guy. But whether he's completely trustworthy because he doesn't have a really substantial record on a lot of these issues, that's up for debate. Now let me know in the comments what you think of Andrew Yang. What do you think in regards to the other candidates? And also, a lot of people told me to cover Tulsi Gabbard. Put down in the comments who you want me to do next in this series. I have a nice little list here with a couple things, a lot of things actually, and I've got my mind who I'm going to do next. But if people really want Tulsi Gabbard, I did watch a Joe Rogan podcast with her, and I've been following her on Twitter for maybe 4 years, so I do know who she is and everything. I just need to research her presidential policies a lot more and see where she stands on all these issues. But yeah, leave it down in the comments. If you want to follow me on social media, follow me at The Cavernacle on both Twitter and Instagram. I also have a WordPress blog, which is just The Cavernacle WordPress. Go check that out if you want to see some stuff I've written. Some of it's pretty interesting. I don't know if I would have hit 5k subscribers by now, but if I haven't, please help me get to 5k. You know, share this video, maybe send it to people that you think might like this style of content. But I'm really grateful for all the recent support and all the recent subscribers. I really appreciate reading through all the comments. I don't know if anyone's noticed, I've tried to reply to all of them, but it does take quite a while, to be honest. But yeah, I really appreciate all the support in the last couple of weeks. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.